And good evening. We are doing it live right here in the 5 o'clock hour in Los Angeles. Mottek On Money, 5 nights a week for you, live on the air here in 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast at kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, and all your favorite podcast platforms. Happy Halloween. It was more treat than trick on Wall Street today, with stocks moving higher, though the gains were not enough to reverse a 3-month losing streak. The month of October now in the Wall Street history books, investors preparing for some more big news later this week, including the latest Federal Reserve interest rate decision and the release of the monthly jobs report, the so-called big enchilada of monthly economic reports. We'll be getting that on Friday. The Dow coming in for a closing gain today of 124 points. It is down about 450 points this month, down about 1.5% this month, and yes, the third straight month of declines. The S&P 500 ended the day up 27 points to settle at 4,194. It was down nearly 100 points for the month, or 2.2%. The NASDAQ gained 62 points today to finish at 12,851. That index has plunged about 400 points this month, or 2.8%. It's also third straight month of decline. And by the way, the longest losing streak since the 3 months that ended in June of 2022 for the tech names. Among the losers today, Caterpillar shares dropping nearly 7%. That's a leading Dow decliner today and drag on the blue chip index. Even with the third quarter profit beat today, the maker of construction and mining equipment had a tepid outlook for the fourth quarter. We're going to be getting some news from the Federal Reserve as it begins a 2-day policy setting meeting today. That'll be wrapping up tomorrow. It's expected to leave its policy interest rates unchanged. We'll see what happens. That'll be the big news. And, of course, consumer confidence out today. A new reading out today reaching a 5-month low, buffeted by the headwinds of rising interest rates, inflation worries, and uncertainty about what's happening in the Middle East. We're watching developments there very closely, of course. The Israeli Defense Force spokesperson reports that Israeli forces are in close quarters combat with Hamas terrorists as they push further into Gaza. The U.S. Senate confirming Jacob Lew as the U.S. ambassador to Israel today, filling that key diplomatic position. As Israel fights a war with Hamas, Lew, a Treasury Secretary under President Obama, was confirmed by a vote of 53 to 43. The Israeli military says it shot down a surface-to-air missile that was launched from Lebanon at an IDF drone. In response, an Air Force strike occurred on the source of the missile fire, and the cell that launched the projectile was hit, according to a statement from the Israel Defense Forces. We're getting some new readings on real estate today, and also some concerning news as well. New readings and some big news impacting residential as well as commercial real estate. The latest S&P Case-Shiller CoreLogic Home Price Index released today showed home prices rose more than expected over the summer, hitting new highs as demand continues to outstrip supply in many areas. Home prices in the Los Angeles area moving up 0.5% in August and posted a gain of 3.2% over the past year. We'll get the latest on home prices from CoreLogic's chief economist, Selma Hepp. She put together the report that was released today. And meanwhile, mortgage rates continue to hover at or near 23-year highs. We'll get an update on that tonight from Fred Solomon, president of Solomon Financial Mortgage and Real Estate. Analysts at Wells Fargo say the U.S. housing market appears headed for a recession, comparing the current situation to the 1980s when the Fed's aggressive interest rate hikes also put pressure on real estate back then. A couple of other big stories impacting real estate tonight. Shares of real estate-related stocks plunging following a jury ruling that has the potential to shake up the way people buy homes. A Missouri jury today deemed that the National Association of Realtors, Home Services of America, and Keller Williams colluded to inflate or maintain high commission rates. An analyst at Jefferies said in a note to clients that a judge could issue an injunction preventing commission sharing on MLSs or multiple listing services, which would hurt the buyer-agent business. Meanwhile, shares of shared office space company WeWork plummeted today after hours this afternoon after a report that the once-hot co-working space provider plans to file for bankruptcy protection as early as next week, according to the Wall Street Journal. Well, it is Halloween. It is a big retail holiday, by the way. Total Halloween spending expected to reach a record $12.2 billion this year, exceeding last year's record of $10.6 billion. That, according to the National Retail Federation's annual survey. And it looks like previous years, the top ways consumers are planning to celebrate are handing out candy at 68%, decorating their home or yard 53%, or dressing in costume at 50%. Big night in West Hollywood. The Halloween Carnival is on for this evening from 6 p.m. to 11 in a 1-mile stretch of Santa Monica Boulevard between North Doheny Drive and North La Cienega Boulevard. Joining us live now on this Halloween evening, and very appropriately so, I might add, is the one and only Ben Stein for our annual Halloween Frank and Stein conversation. Yep, Ben Stein, well-known financial and political commentator, economist, author of numerous books, presidential speechwriter, game show host to Win Ben Stein's Money, and yes, that Ben Stein who played himself as the economics professor in the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off in one of the most famous scenes in American cinema. Ben Stein, good evening to you, sir.
How are you, sir?
Wonderful. Thanks very much for taking the call tonight. I hope you're not trying to go to Pavilions this evening. It's going to be packed there on Santa Monica Boulevard for that big parade and carnival tonight. Give us your view of things here this evening.
Well, I was fascinated and amused by the list of statistics you read off. I always find it amazing when people predict giant things like real estate or agricultural equipment share prices when they can't really get the price right for the next day. They can't really get the price right for the next week. And yet they pretend they can get the price right for months or years in advance. I mean, it's kind of comical that we foolish investors believe in them. And frankly, I, as a foolish investor, have given up believing in them, and I just stick with the indexes and indices and go forward from there. And I've had fairly good results, not by no means perfect results, but fairly good results from that. And I'm really, really amused at the predictions about housing. And you mentioned a very interesting statistic that mortgage rates were now the highest they've been in 23 years. Well, if you could buy a house now at the price that houses were 23 years ago, you'd be a very, very happy camper. The idea that we can predict what housing prices are going to be 10, 20, 23 years in the future is literally comical. And what we find out is that the virtue of real estate, namely imputed rent coming to you tax-free, accumulated price appreciation inevitably taking place on a large scale, the virtue of having a place to live which is safe for you no matter what happens with inflation. These are such gigantic benefits that it seems to me they dwarf the prospect of making money by following the predictions of this or that index. And I think the guys and gals, of course, who make the indices are smart people. They work hard. The amount of data they gather is absolutely overwhelming, but it never seems to do you much good. I mean, there's a simple rule about real estate. Find a great neighborhood, get the cheapest house in that great neighborhood that you can afford, and live in it and be happy. And if you can, and a lot of people can't be happy no matter what they do, but real estate is just such a great thing, and especially in Southern California. It amazes me that people are frightened about it. It just amazes me because the record of home price appreciation in this part of the world has been so good. I don't understand exactly why we are worried about it at this point or at any other point.
On the live with Ben Stein. Interesting to note that the folks at Wells Fargo are predicting a real estate recession, as I mentioned here. So it should be noted here, Ben Stein, we're speaking on the day in which the 100th anniversary of the Hollywood sign is being celebrated here in the Los Angeles area today. 100 years ago, the Hollywood sign went up, and initially it said not just Hollywood, but Hollywood Land. It was actually an advertising sign for real estate.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. I've seen pictures of that. And speaking of which, wouldn't it be great if you could have bought land around that Hollywood sign 23 years ago and then watched the statistics pour in telling you what a fool you were, and then one day opened up and found out that you'd quintupled your money, plus gotten the virtue of being able to live in it tax-free for all that time. It just amazes me that people do not see all the virtues in real estate. I'm biased. I have a lot of real estate. But I must say I've done basically very, very well with it. And my great regret about that is that I had some really, really great real estate, and I was talked out of holding on to it. by people who didn't know any better, and I wish I'd never listened to them.
Well, thanks for sharing that wisdom with us here this evening, Ben Stein. We're all watching what's happening in the Middle East and, of course, the ongoing situation with Russia and Ukraine. I know you've been following all these developments very, very closely. Give us your view of the world here at the moment.
I really do not understand why Russia gets away with what I think are pretty clearly war crimes against the Ukrainian people and against Ukraine in general. I don't understand why they're allowed to just invade a country that they considered a sovereign country until a few years ago, and then they invaded, and they've done some very serious war crimes, according to various observers, including mass rapes, mass killing of women by raping them and then burying them alive underground. And yet Russia is a country in which we all respect tremendously, and I guess I don't understand why it is that they're allowed to get away with that. I mean, I don't think we should go to war with them over it, but why are they allowed to be considered a respectable member of the family of nations? And of course, that goes the same for Hamas. I mean, here's Hamas. They were given Gaza greatly improved by Israel in 2005, incredibly improved by Israeli investment. And the first thing they did was destroy all the investment that Israel had left to them. And then they just started blowing up everything they could and killing everyone from Israel that they possibly could. And then culminating in the events a few weeks ago, which were just barbaric and extreme that the Israelis seen since the demise of Hitler. And yet somehow they are worshipped by college students. They are worshipped by the media. My wife and I, our mouths agape in horror, watched a BBC documentary about the history of relations between Israel and so-called Palestine. It was just almost unbelievable that the lies that this documentary told, coming from Britain, which is a great country and incredibly wonderful people, but boy, do they not like Israel.
On there live with Ben Stein, and a lot of people, of course, nervous about what's happening around the world, and the latest consumer confidence number taking a hit today, hitting a 5-month low with the situation unfolding in the Middle East and the horrific events that you just mentioned, Ben, certainly weighing on everyone's mind here. What do you see ahead in all this for the economy? You got a big Fed decision coming up here on interest rates and all that, and then the job numbers coming out this week. How are things looking from that perspective?
Well, I don't think we in the United States have a thing to worry about in terms of the fight between Israel and Hamas. I mean, as moral human beings, Americans, who I think are the leaders in morality throughout the world and have been since the end of slavery. But I think we have shown ourselves to be the moral leaders of the world. But I don't think the fight between Israel and Hamas is going to have much effect on the U.S. economy. I think eventually Israel will just say at a certain point, we've killed enough members and leaders of the Hamas, and we're going to stop for a while. But it's kind of a sad story about the human animal that we have demonstrations at colleges, universities, including my alma mater, Columbia, which I went to as an undergraduate. I have not seen any stories about demonstrations at Yale, but they probably have been some. I went there for law school and graduate school in economics. But it just amazes me how ignorant and benighted America's students are, that they would demonstrate on behalf of people who are pretty much clearly boasting about committing mass rapes of harmless women, children, beheading infants, and setting their bodies afire. And these people we have demonstrations praising these people. My wife, God bless her soul, sitting a few feet away from me as we speak, went to a place called George Washington University. They have up a giant sign in lights on the library saying, God bless our Palestinian martyrs. And this is a group, they're praising a group who literally, not as a figurative thing, went into children's nurseries, snatched children out of their beds, chopped off their heads, and set their bodies afire. And these are people being praised by college students. At a college, my wife didn't go to college, she went to the law school. What on earth is going on in American students' heads? I mean, they are obviously confused on a very deep level.
So unbelievably disturbing.
I don't think it has a thing to do with the economy. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
Beg your pardon.
Well, certainly the concern is that if this conflict spreads through, if Iran gets even more involved than it already is, or if the U.S. tangles with Iran, where our military is being built up there even more, according to the Pentagon spokesman we might have seen there today, talking about additional troops heading to the region. So it's certainly a very nervous time. And it should also be noted, along with what you just mentioned. I don't know if you saw the report in the New York Post, but it said groups behind the Israel-bashing protests backing Hamas got $15 million plus from George Soros, the far-left billionaire kingmaker George Soros, funneling more than $15 million in grants since 2016 to the groups that you just described.
Right, and of course he's Jewish, but he's. This is just an opinion. I'm not a psychiatrist by training, but I personally think he must be quite unwell. It's just an opinion to be doing such a thing. And God help us that we have people like that who are people of influence, especially in one of the political parties. It's just stunning to me that person is allowed to have the influence that he has.
On a lighter note, are you going to be...
Again, it has nothing to do with the economy. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yep.
Your pardon.
All right. Well, speaking of the economy, a big night for the economy. It is Halloween. Will you be contributing to the economy tonight in some fashion?
Well, we have set out quite a lot of candy in front of our house, and I suppose that's a big help to dentists. I don't know who else it's a help to, but I hope that people enjoy themselves on Halloween. It's here's my take, my dear friend. When I was a child growing up in Silver Spring, Maryland, the suburb of Washington, we went all go out trick-or-treating, and yes, we were worried that we might get lost or get overtired or catch a cold, but nobody thought we were in any physical danger. And now there's real fear about what's going to happen to our children as they go walking around the neighborhood with their baskets or rather buckets for trick-or-treating. What a world we've become where parents are genuinely afraid to let their children walk around the neighborhood trick-or-treating. I have an extremely close friend in Simi Valley, which is a lovely area, and was originally built largely to be a home for police and firemen, and women, I guess, too, I'm sure. And now even there, parents are afraid to send their children out trick-or-treating.
Isn't that something? Well, Ben Stein, we wish you a happy Halloween, first and foremost, and heading into the holiday season. We'll hopefully get a chance to speak with you again very soon. And with everything that's happening in the world, appreciate your tremendous experience and expertise here. So we wish you a wonderful evening, Ben. Thank you very much for taking the call here tonight.
Thank you, Frank. You're a great guy. God bless you.
Thank you very much. The one and only Ben Stein. That was our Frankenstein conversation, Halloween edition, and we do this as needed here. Frankenstein, that is Ben Stein, of course, the well-known financial and political commentator, economist, author of numerous books, and, of course, famously played the economics professor in the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and one of the most famous scenes in American cinema. Ben Stein, thank you again very much for being with us. Well, as the weather cools and we head into the holiday season, traffic still jammed, drivers still aggressive, and unfortunately accidents do happen, as we just heard. So if you're hurt in an accident, call my friend and designated super lawyer and best lawyer in America, Clark Fielding, and his incredible team at Fielding Law. When you call Fielding Law, they don't pressure you. They treat you with kindness and respect. They gather information on your accident and set up a customized plan. Now, if I was hurt or anyone that I care about gets into an accident, I tell them to immediately call the Fielding Law team. Make it easy for yourself and put the number in your phone right now under the word accident. That number is 833-88-SHARK, 833-88-SHARK. Don't handle accidents on your own. Call someone who has a ton of experience navigating the insurance companies. So many 790 KBC listeners have taken my advice, and you should too. Clark Fielding understands the right lawyer will make or break your case. Don't go at it alone. If hurt in any kind of an accident, car, truck, motorcycle, pedestrian, animal bite, slip, trip, fall, you name it, call the one to trust. Clark Fielding of Fielding Law. The number is 833-88-SHARK, or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. Again, that's clarkthesharklaw.com. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. 790 KBC welcomes Richard Marx Solo and KT Tunstall coming to the Cerritos Center for the Performing Arts on November 12th. Tickets are on sale now at CerritosCenter.com. Right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-790-5222. You can get a pair of tickets to the show if you're caller 9. Call now, 1-888-790-5222. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. It's Halloween. Happy Halloween. Also the eve of the Fed's decision on interest rates and a statement on the economy, which we'll be getting first thing, well, actually tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, and then the full-blown news conference at 11:30. We'll be hearing from the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, and then he'll be taking questions. And on Friday, first thing in the morning, that'll be the big enchilada of monthly economic reports, the jobs report from the U.S. Labor Department. Today, we saw the stock market bounce back from a recent drop, but still down for the month of October. We saw the Dow come in for a closing gain of 124 points at 33,053. The S&P 500 moved up 27 at 4,194, and the NASDAQ gained 62 points at 12,851. JetBlue among the casualties of the day, down about 10.5% after the carrier warned it would post a wider than expected fourth quarter loss. It also missed analyst estimates for its third quarter loss in revenue. Shares of British Petroleum BP dropping nearly 5% after the British oil company fell short of analyst expectations and posting a 60% drop in its third quarter profits following a weak performance from its gas trading division. Taking a look at the price of oil, it's up 45 cents now at $81.47 a barrel. Gold down 70 cents at $1,993.60 an ounce. Checking the cryptos now, Bitcoin has had quite a run, down 25 right now at 34,614. Ethereum up 8 at 1,822, and Doge at 7 cents. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Going big on real estate tonight. We have some new readings and some big news impacting residential as well as commercial real estate. First of all, the latest CoreLogic S&P Case-Shiller Home Price Index. That authoritative index got released today, showing home prices rising more than expected over the summer. Nationwide up 2.6% and basically hitting new highs as demand continues to outstrip supply in many regions of the country. Home prices here in Los Angeles moving higher again. Let's bring in economist Dr. Selma Hepp, who put together the report that was released today, CoreLogic's chief economist. Selma Hepp, thank you very much for coming to the line. Take it from the top and tell us about your latest report.
Thank you, Frank, first of all, for having me on. So as you said, home prices have really sped up over the summer. And what's interesting for our local area here in Los Angeles and San Diego, that we've seen increasingly more of home price appreciation than some other parts of the country. Because home prices declined in the latter part of last year, to gain that 3% increase, we had to have more than 3% increase overall this year. So basically, from the bottom of when prices bottomed out early this year to now, home prices are actually up 8% in LA and 11% in San Diego. So really, really a lot of appreciation, and not the same story necessarily in Northern California. So what data has been showing is that we've had a lot of folks from Northern California coming down here and putting pressure on home prices.
Very interesting, and this despite the fact that mortgage rates are at 23-year highs. It seems that some analysts are concerned that because fixed-rate mortgage rates are up around 8%, that we might see the U.S. housing market go into a 1980s-style recession. What's your outlook on where things go from here?
Yeah, I mean, given I don't expect the same rate of home price appreciation that we saw during the spring home buying season or the summer. And this 8% mortgage rate is quite recent. So we're not going to see that impact home prices until the end of this year into the next year. But I am concerned that home prices will have some impact from these high mortgage rates, and we may see some declines over the winter. But overall, our forecast still for this area is pretty robust. I mean, we expect a 4 to 5% increase in home price appreciation over the next year through summer of next year. So, I think it depends on the market. It depends on Other things, not just home prices or mortgage rates. I mean, their inventory plays a huge role. And I think the reason why we saw so much home price appreciation is because we're so low on inventory. And again, to single out markets down here in Southern California, it's some of the most inventory constrained markets. So that's really what's putting pressure on home prices here.
Yes, so affordability and availability continue to be the big issue, certainly here in the Los Angeles area. And I'm looking at your report now. In L.A., prices up 0.5% month to month and up 3.2% over the past year, according to your latest report. In San Diego, prices up 0.6% month to month and up 4.1% over the past year. But it looks like in San Francisco and the Bay Area, prices have ticked lower again month to month and down 2.5% for the year there. What's happening in the Bay Area?
Well, I think it's just, Bay Area has been hit harder than LA because of outmigration of folks from that area. Tech industries in particular, people have taken their tech jobs elsewhere. So the demand pressure is not the same. And what I mentioned earlier, a lot of these folks from the Bay Area are in fact coming down here. So the 0.5% increase in LA that you mentioned is much higher than we historically see in August, a monthly increase in home prices. So it's really illustrating how much pressure we continue to see down here in terms of home prices.
That's very interesting. And some of the hot areas where people have left this area to go elsewhere, Phoenix, Las Vegas, for example, I see prices there have come down rather significantly. What about Phoenix and Vegas? I see Vegas down nearly 5%, for example. What else is catching your attention?
Well, yes, that's a year-over-year change, and that really is reflecting declines that we saw in a lot of part of last year in Phoenix and Las Vegas. But similar to the strength that we're seeing here in Las Vegas, home prices were up 1.1%, which is double the rate that they usually get at this time of the year. And Phoenix also saw a strong appreciation of 0.7%. I mean, these are just numbers, but what really is suggesting that markets we were most concerned about and the markets that were declining quite rapidly in the latter part of last year when the first mortgage rates started increasing are actually rebounding pretty strongly. And this is not just the case for home prices, but rents as well. So I think to some extent that is reflecting some of the migration from LA Metro to Las Vegas and Phoenix. The other metro that Los Angeles people tend to go to is Riverside too. And Riverside has continued to see strong home price appreciation as a result.
On the Air Live with Dr. Selma Hepp, the chief economist at CoreLogic, and we're going to be speaking to somebody on the interest rates, on the mortgage rates specifically. Of course, the Fed will be meeting tomorrow and expected to hold the line on short-term rates, which would hold the line on those adjustable rate mortgages. But with the bond yields still high near 5%, the fixed-rate mortgages are still hovering at or near 23-year highs. What's your outlook on where mortgage rates go from here?
Well, I think unfortunately we're going to see these high mortgage rates for a while stay where they are right now. We don't expect any relief until middle of next year, basically. I mean, I think maybe during the spring home buying season next year, we hope for some relief. But unfortunately, mortgage rates and interest rates overall are going to be higher for longer, as they say.
All right. And what about commercial real estate? That's something you track as well. Give us your thoughts about what's happening on the commercial real estate front.
Yeah, I think, there are concerns, particularly in terms of properties that are due for refi right now. And there is a huge volume of them that do over the next couple of years. And I think there's a concern over default risk. But I think what we're seeing is that, there are some properties that have made headlines in terms of, not making the payments and things like that. But then properties that areas that we're really concerned with, like San Francisco, for example, there have been buyers stepping in and buying some of these properties. So I think, there's going to be some reshuffling, but I'm not as concerned for commercial real estate as I was maybe earlier this year, just given the continued demand for commercial properties.
Economist Dr. Selma Hepp, the chief economist at CoreLogic. Selma, thank you very much for sharing your report with us here in great detail. It's always great to speak with you. We wish everyone there at CoreLogic all the best, and thank you very much for the call this evening.
Thank you for having me, Frank.
Thank you very, very much. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC, continuing our coverage of real estate tonight and mortgage rates hovering at or near 23-year highs. Let's bring in Fred Solomon now, president of Solomon Financial Mortgage and Realty. Fred, thanks very much for taking the call here. Big day tomorrow with the Fed decision on interest rates and a statement on the economy, the markets, and certainly everyone in real estate will be glued to what the Fed chairman has to say. And we'll see if we'll get another rate hike, which would impact the adjustable rate mortgages. In the meantime, the fixed rates are holding steady around the 23-year highs now with the yield in the 10-year note, which impacts those rates hovering near 5%. Good evening to you, sir, and give us your view of things here at the moment.
Everybody has an opinion, and, we all have you're either heads or tails, 50% right or 50% wrong. But to me, it's about the data. And, when people are asked questions, well, what do you think is going to happen to real estate prices? What do you think is going to happen to mortgage prices? I have a really strong opinion about that. And I am a data watcher. I watch data. Data is important in our mortgage industry. And the data that we watch in order to properly answer that question is what's going on with inflation, 3.7% versus 9% last year, and what's going on with unemployment. And the unemployment market is, it's just, the employment market is just strong. We're still at all-time record low unemployment right now. So it's just a time right now that is when we see people start losing jobs and when we see inflation come down, we know interest rates are going to come down. And so that's what I do is I watch the data, and if we start seeing that happen first, second quarter of next year, then we can expect these rates to come down. And that's what everybody's hoping for.
On there live with Fred Solomon, and let me ask you this, Fred. Of course, you're right about the job picture being certainly a very, very important part, if not the most important part in real estate. As when people have jobs, real estate does great. But now with the rate hike situation here, with mortgage rates taking that dramatic jump from the pandemic days to where we are now, we see analysts at Wells Fargo, for example, saying that the housing market appears headed for a recession, comparing the current situations of the 1980s when the Fed's aggressive interest rate hikes back then also put pressure on real estate. Do you see a similar situation playing out here now?
So we've had 11 rate hikes, 5.25% since the pandemic, right? So when you have interest rates increase by 5.25%, then it's inevitable it's going to slow down real estate. And the biggest problem with real estate right now is that no one wants to sell. So if we start seeing foreclosures and people losing their jobs, then there will be more inventory. If we start seeing, people dying and family members selling their houses, then there'll be more inventory. And at that point, we have more inventory and higher interest rates, then we can see these prices come down. And the only thing that's going to save the market, which the Fed wants, housing prices to come down. So to answer your question, in order for these rates to come down, in order for housing prices to come down, we need more inventory. We need in addition to more inventory, we need higher interest rates, which seems to be the case right now. And if we see 2 negative quarters of GDP, that's the definition of a recession, which is going to take at least 6 months to officially call it a recession. And can I see that happening? Absolutely, because there's this commercial real estate market getting hurt pretty bad right now, and that's the driver of real estate.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's switch from residential to commercial here with some high-profile distressed sales and people turning over the keys and so forth of malls and all that. What is your view of what's happening on the commercial side?
Well, commercial is a lot worse than residential right now, surprisingly enough. And my dad, he's a big real estate developer. He's a big commercial real estate. He always said, houses, no. Commercial, yes. And he's selling properties, right? He's selling commercial properties at a 50% lower price than what he would have sold them for 18 months ago. And these are in prime areas. So I can't understand why the commercial, financing is very difficult. That's the number one reason. But I can't understand why the I guess it was probably COVID, and COVID taught us that people can work from home. People are requiring less space. When you require less space, there's less demand. I don't know what it is, Frank, but these commercial properties are getting hit hard. I'm talking areas like Santa Barbara, Thousand Oaks, Studio City, places where my dad owns a lot of shopping centers and office buildings. It's unfathomable for me to watch this happen, but it's happening. And I talk to my broker friends in the commercial real estate space, and they're saying the same thing. They're like, Fred, you can't get financing. It's like you got to be walking on water to get financing today. It's just crazy.
Wow. Well, that is quite significant what you just described. And I don't know if you saw the report in the Wall Street Journal today, and we see shares of office space company WeWork plunging this afternoon on that Wall Street Journal report saying that WeWork plans to file for bankruptcy protection as early as next week. The Journal report comes after the big hit we've seen in the office world, as you mentioned, coming off the pandemic. And looks like, according to the Journal, they're weighing a filing for Chapter 11 protection back east. And the shares have nosedived 40% here in after-hours trading. WeWork, of course, was once the hot player in the co-working creative office space world.
Yeah. And I'm not a negative Nelly. I love real estate. I love what I do. I love mortgages. I'm a mortgage guy. I'm a real estate broker. I've been doing this for 32 years, so I'm not trying to scare anybody with this information. All I tell people is if you buy something today, and I think commercial real estate is a good buy today, by the way. That's my personal opinion. I think if you're a buyer, you got cash, commercials, good. That's my 100% honest opinion on that. So what I say when people call me up and they ask for my advice, it happens every day. And when they call me up, I say to them just real simply, what do you think is going to happen to real estate prices? And then they tell me what they feel is going to happen. And I say, you know what? You're probably right. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. Of course, we can watch the data and all that stuff, but the Fed wants prices to come down. So when the Fed wants housing prices to come down, they're going to do everything in their power to make that happen. So my personal statement that I make to everybody, and I deal with actors and people that buy $2 million homes, and they don't care if the payment's $4,000 higher a month because they can afford it. For the people that can't afford it, $4,000 a month on $1 million home is a big deal, or whatever the case may be, based on the purchase price. But I always tell them, if you own your home for 7 years, even if it drops in value after you purchase it, as long as you can weather the storm for at least 7 years, it's going to be worth the same or more than what you paid for it 7 years from now. So do what you think is the best for you and your family.
Fred, we wish you and your family all the best, and thank you very much for taking the call here this evening. That is Fred Solomon, president of Solomon Financial Mortgage and Realty, live with us here tonight on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Of course, we'll be watching what happens with the Fed decision tomorrow on interest rates, a statement on the economy, and then the full-blown news conference from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. We'll have coverage, of course, on that tomorrow evening right here. Now stay tuned for the 790 KBC News Blitz with our legal eagle Royal Oaks coming your way next. This is Mottek On Money. Happy Halloween, 790 KBC.